Hello, welcome to the Honest Wargamer. I'm your host, Rob. In this video, we are going to be looking at the stats since the latest Battle Scroll update to balance or try to rebalance Age of Sigmar 4. Games Workshop every 3 months or so-ish, I think it's fair to say, does a battle scroll which changes the points and the rules and a bunch of other stuff to rebalance the game, as well as obviously releasing battle tomes and everything else they do to make the game alive and keep going over the course of a season. We are only a month away from the start of a new season with a Scourger Grand and everything we're going to see for AOS 4 and their kind of second season. So this is some of the hottest news on what's happening with the current season, towards the end of the season as well, and also what the last battle scroll did for the different armies. So we're going to be breaking down all of this information, or I'm going to be breaking down all this information, but all of it has been brought to you by Warhammer Rob, who is our stat man in the field, and we've been working together on stats now for 6 years or so, something like that. Anyway, here you can see the results are taken from 36 different countries. We include them from a bunch of different websites. The reason this is important to say is because other aggregate sites or videos or even Games Workshop themselves only scrape data from certain places. For example, Best Coast Pairings. Malarkey, Longshanks, Tourneykeeper, Mini Headquarters, Championship Hub, Tabletop Herald, and a bunch of other places don't get touched, which means important data points get left out. This is also pretty weird because also that means Games Workshop never gets a full data set, and we know this and we've known this for years. They in fact don't even publish any of their win rate stuff anymore, I don't think, online, mainly because probably it'd be so diverse to what people like us produce. So that's important that we mention that. We cover 55 events with over 1,400 players, over 3,500 games. Now that doesn't mean that it's only 1,400 players currently actively playing competitive Age of Sigmar, or it depends what you mean by active. I think in our main data set, we've got thousands more. I don't know the actual number offhand. I think the last count, it was 5,000, but it might have been higher. But there's lots more active players playing Age of Sigmar at the moment. We also only take results from 2-day events versus 1-day events. 1-day events, I think, skew the numbers in a very poor way. Now, it's fair to say maybe you should balance games based on a 1-day event, but with game 1 being random and the skill variance being much higher in round 1 and even arguably round 2 events, you really only start to get really good data from games 3, 4, 5 on how armies with players with equal skill expression play against each other. So that's why we use that as our data set, because I think it is more indicative of how armies play versus how players play, where 1-day event data really scrapes and creates a big disparity in information because of that. Okay, let's dive straight in. So the first thing that I always like to look at, because it informs everything that we're doing, is the meta representation. So as you can see, Stormcast Eternal's meta rep is still the highest in the game, but not as high as it once was. During this version of the game, we've had it up to 12% at one point. We've got Slaves to Darkness at 9% as well. Just by the way, just getting some hot information in, we currently have effectively 6,000 unique players playing competitive 2-day Age of Sigmar around the world. Obviously, if you include then 1-day events, because many people don't play 2-day events, you include 1-day events, and then if you're to push that on and take that just to your casual local people who play at the club, which might be many of you who are listening as an example, I think it's fair to say that you're probably pushing between 10 and 15,000 people who consider themselves to be active players of the game, which is pretty massive, truth be told, in my opinion. But it might be even bigger than that. We actually don't know the difference between 2-day to 1-day to your casual play at home. So it could just be numbers much bigger than that. So both Slaves to Darkness and Stormcast Eternal's meta representation is down. Less people are playing them. And they both did get, I guess, pseudo nerfs in the battle scroll. Slaves to Darkness, definitely, I will consider to keep dropping as well, depending on what happens with the upcoming update, when we get the new season happening. But for now, I expect it to see it keep going down. Straight at the bottom, we've got Hedonites of Slaanesh, Cities of Sigmar, Kharadron Overlords, Daughters of Cain, all not very popular. Now, that's actually quite surprising for at least Hedonites of Slaanesh. But Daughters of Cain and Kharadron Overlords have always had a pretty low meta representation. Ultimately, they're just kind of, I don't want to call them fringe armies, but they are armies that people don't play as much as some of the others. who knows what reason? Maybe it's the models, maybe it's the lore, maybe it's just the general vibe. Soulblight Gravelords is also low. They have also been very high before, but I think it's because that long lead up to their Battletome release. Their Battletome release still taking a while, and we're still waiting for some of those models. At time of recording, I don't think Vordry is even out on pre-order. Maybe he is, or just, but still, people are kind of waiting to play all the tools that they want to use inside their army. So, but Daughters of Cain and Kharadron Overlords, I expect to always be towards that lower end of the spectrum, because just not as many people pick them up. Maybe they're just a little bit more, singular as play styles. Cities of Sigmar is one that's a little bit surprising to me, but also it's a very complicated army, lots of models, a lot of hobby to do before you even talk about the fact it's not very good to play. And Heated Slash, similar thing, quite a complicated army to paint, build, put together, and actually not super, super competitive. But you'll see their win rate isn't that low. Then you've got Disciples of Tzeentch at the bottom as well. Kruleboyz, Fire Slayers, Ogre Maw Tribes, and Nighthaunt. Nighthaunt were much more popular. Ultimately, this isn't a mark of how popular an army is. You will take an army to an event that you think is an army that will help you do well. And some of these armies also don't generally tend to perform super well. Although, in the most recent stat show, we saw Ogres do well, we saw Lumineth do well, we saw Tzeentch do well, we saw Kruleboyz do well, we saw DOK and Kharadron Overlords do well. So, and also Heated Slash. So that doesn't mean that they definitely aren't good. What is really important at telling from the meta representation is that Stormcast Eternals and Slaves to Darkness, you've got high armor save, elite units that you have to deal with. So which means you either need mortal damage or high rend, because that takes up about 20% of the meta. So that's going to be one of your games that you play in a 2-day event, but it's likely to be like 2 or 3. Pretty interesting. Okay, now let's go look at the win rates. Now, this is the one that everyone loves to take photos of. This is the one that people talk about a lot. Many years ago, we decided that win rates should be between 45 and 55%. Actually, if you look at other competitive games outside of Games Workshop, or if you look at sports, actually, that's quite a broad spectrum to give Games Workshop. It's like a big noose to give them. But that's generally what we do. So anything above 45%, is needs to look at. Anything below 45% also needs to look at as well. And everything in the middle, or what's like we'd like to call it sometimes, the fat middle, needs a conversation. Like, doesn't need a conversation. It's kind of okay. Now, what's interesting about this is pretty nice if you look at it. Only 3 above, only 3 below. That's not too bad. With a game with 25 factions, I'll take that. That's not too terrible. If we look at the top, and now you won't remember, or if you're watching this, you may remember, there was a time during AOS 3, so the first year of AOS 3, Sons of Behemoth had over a 60% win rate for about 9 months. That's where all of my hatred for Sons of Behemoth comes from. I had to watch them every single week live streaming. At that point, I was live streaming tournaments pretty much every weekend, and I had to constantly just watch them play. And it's boring and dull, and it is uninteresting. But they are back to the top, no matter how much I've tried to tell people they aren't good or not fun. They're back to the top, and they're at 58% win rate. Now, they're also a bit of a problem army as well, because if they're too good, actually making them not good is really difficult to do. Because they generally, they're very swingy. If they're not good, they're bad. They're very, very bad. They won't hit the fat middle. They'll just go straight to the bottom. But Sons of Behemoth, definitely the best at the minute. Why as well? Well, one of the interesting things is mission picks. So tournament organizers normally like to pick missions that have a lot of fighting in the middle, which really benefits Gargants. They don't tend to pick some of the more difficult to achieve missions. For instance, Scorched Earth is good. The Vice is also good as well. Limited Resources is also an interesting one, because that obviously is difficult for Gargants in kind of some ways. But the reason that TOs or tournament organizers generally don't pick them is because they want people to have a nice time, and no one wants to play the complicated missions. Even though the complicated missions do add a little bit more breadth to the game, and they balance the game out a little bit more. So that's why I always put in Scorched Earth and Limited Resources, and that's why people hate playing at the TSN Arena. Even though lots of people play here all the time. But they get mad at me for doing it. And I'm like, listen, the game's healthier when you do that, but they don't want to play those missions, right? Everyone just wants to play Battle in the Middle. And when you play Battle in the Middle, the things that love standing together in the middle do really well. please see Sons of Behemoth. Now, Idoneth Deepkin have been one of those sleeper armies we've talked about for a long time. They've been constantly performing. They're very, very good. They're very fast. They're very mobile. They're very able to achieve battle tactics. On turn 3, obviously, everything gets strike first, which is pretty pivotal in the game. They're going to continue to perform this way, I think, until the new edition, and also will be set in the new edition to perform really well. So I think that's really, really positive for them. Lumineth Realm Lords might surprise a lot of people as well, because you don't really hear a lot about LRL at these different events, but ultimately they're very solid. Great command of the magic phase. Very pivot. It's a very it's an army with a really broad roster, unlike KO as an example. Like, they're a very broad roster. You can build them very shooty if you think that's going to work. And very fast. So if you are playing in, like, you know, your local tournament organizer wants something where there's more objectives in more places, then playing a faster army works well. But if you want to play more of a mid-board battle army, then you can go down the kind of Stone Mountain Avalonor route and play more like a Sons of Behemoth playstyle, and therefore you match the energy of what the mission packs are, which is interesting. At the bottom, we've got Gloomspite Gitz. Now, they had a new book out, and that new book definitely took some of the power out of one of their power pieces, which is the Rotgut Trogos. Not quite as survivable, especially with the aggressive shooting that we've seen in the game. They also changed their allegiance ability as well, and just generally made it much worse. So Gloomspite Gitz are down there. Now, I think Gitz can and still will do okay. There are good builds as well, but some of the stuff that's in that book can kind of be countered by some of the stuff that's currently very popular. Cities of Sigmar at the bottom, it needs a complete rewrite from the ground up, in my opinion. There's obviously the new Scourge of Grand stuff going into the new season. We'll have to see, but hopefully we'll see a rewrite with those. Obviously, people are doing okay with things like taking a bunch of Hammers and Rune Lords and stuff by expecting the new battle tome for all of the Elves and Dwarfs to go away. I don't know that to be fact. It's just something I suspect. And then down at the bottom, you can see Fire Slayers. Fire Slayers, we have just seen very recently, have done okay at a couple of GTs. So even though their win rate is low, I still think that they can do okay in the right matchups. But they're a very high skill expression army. You got to put a lot of love and passion into this army. And they're not the easiest to pilot, especially unlike Sons of Behemoth. That's the other thing that makes them have such a high win rate, is they're also very easy to pilot. So they're strong and easy to pilot, which is interesting. Then everything else fits in the middle. And Cruel Boys, I just did the stats this weekend. Cruel Boys did really well recently. They're on the up and up, and we are about to go into a new meta. So there we go. Right. The next slide that we're looking at is the positive win rate potential. So the PWRP. Now, this would be like your buyer's guide if the meta didn't change enough. And one of the reasons that I think this is really good is because what it does is it says, I'd like to go to a GT this weekend. How likely is it that my army is going to be able to get more wins than losses, which I think a lot of people are really excited about. Like, I think a lot of people, their goal isn't to go 5-0. They'd just be like, I'd like to win 3 games, not 3 games and lose 2, not lose 3 games and only win 2, you know. So what army will help me do that? And then you can see that disparity here. At the top, you've got Sons of Behemoth with a 61 PWRP, so positive win rate potential. This is my favorite stat because this is kind of like a noob's guide to playing the game. And obviously, this is saying pick up Sons of Behemoth and go play it. I personally am saying don't pick up Sons of Behemoth and go play it, because I don't think you're really learning how to play Warhammer at that point. And I think generally everyone dislikes playing against it. Now, I'm bringing a lot of personal feelings to that, so that probably isn't true. I just want to be really clear that I am being biased, and intentionally so. And I will continue to be forever. Okay. So, Sons of Behemoth have got the best positive win rate potential. Then you got Deepkin and Flesh Eater Courts up there as well. At the bottom, and this really shows you the disparity, Fire Slayers especially, only 28% of their matches, of the people playing, have ended up with more wins than they've had losses. On the other side of that, twice as high is Sons of Behemoth with 60% of the people have had more wins than losses. That's a pretty amazing stat, like very reliable. And then everything in between. All these, by the way, will be posted on the Honest Wargamer website. And I'll also include a link to the Warhammer Rob and his Blue Sky account if you want to talk to him. He's also in our Patreon Discord, where you can ask him a bunch of questions as well if you want to. He's pretty excited about telling you how good he is at playing Death Armies. I know that for a fact. Right, so Another interesting and useful addition to the stats this week or this month, because Rob does change them around. You can see he's also put on the 4+ wins stat. So this is our yellow bar on everything else. One of the things that he's pointing out is that Sylvaneth have about twice as many wins as Disciples of Tzeentch, have a similar positive win rate potential as Sylvaneth. But Disciples of Tzeentch, as you can see here in the kind of the middle section, have got about twice as many 4+ wins. So in some cases, what is happening is that like the 3-2 or the winning 3 games is the ceiling for some armies, and the 4+ wins is really showing that. For instance, Soulblight Gravelords, their ceiling is about 3 wins as well, versus things like Tzeentch, Lumineth, or even Cruel Boys, when they win 4 games, which is interesting. But yeah, that's very cool. The next slide is our TWhip ratio trend. I know. TWhip ratio is if you lose the first game and win the rest, then that's easier to do than winning the first 4 games and losing the last game. What this indicates is that when you lose a game, you normally go into the losers bracket with other people who have also lost a game. Therefore, either the skill expression or the army power is lower in those brackets. Therefore, those games are easier. Winning the first 4 games and losing at the end really is meant to indicate that an army is doing well. And then there's either a predator at the top of the pack that it can't defeat and that constantly brings it down, or it just doesn't have the power, as it gets there. So what we're seeing here is that Cruel Boys, right, are an army that really struggles as it gets towards the top end of the game. So it'll win its first 3 or 4 games, and then whenever it gets towards the end of the game, it will struggle against whatever it faces at the end there. But it also will always, it more consistently goes towards that top end. Disciples of Tzeentch is in that same boat, and Bone Reapers and Sons of Behemoth are also in that same boat as well. On the other end of this, Ogre Maw Tribes, Ironjaws, Kharadron Overlords, Slaves to Darkness, Stormcast Eternals, and Fire Slayers, they do better once they've lost their first game or first couple of games, and then they tend to win their games 3, 4, 5. That's what they're saying. And this is an interesting data set. The Cruel Boys one has got to be kind of interested, but it's because they have a low meta representation is why we're seeing that number be quite so high. Tzeentch makes sense where they are. I think Tzeentch is a high skill expression army already, and then when you play them, there's a lot of control, which many players just are very flummoxed by early, especially in like a tournament, and then later on, you hitting players and armies that are probably able to deal with it. Our next stat shows you the changing win rate between battle scrolls. It's pretty good. This is a new one that Rob came up with recently, which I really, really like. So you can see our last battle scrolls, 4.2, and our new one, 4.21. You can see that some armies, Fire Slayers and Cities of Sigmar, for example, have taken pretty horrific nosedives. And some armies like Soulblight Gravelords, Lumineth Realm Lords, Sylvaneth, and also Sons of Behemoth have also climbed. Although in Sons of Behemoth case, it's climbed from like bottom of the top to the top of the top. But in some of those cases, for instance, Sylvaneth, they've taken a drastic leak up, which is very cool to see. This is really good because it shows you how schizophrenic really the balance of the game can be, even between battle scrolls. And I think maybe if Rob's got the data set, when we get towards the end of this season, maybe we can look at all of the different battle scrolls and we can kind of look at how much these have moved up and down, although we do have some graphs for that as well. But this is pretty interesting, especially seeing Fire Slayers and also Cities of Sigmar drop so aggressively. We also have an update for how the positive win rate potential, which is how likely you are to win more games than not at an event, has changed between battle scrolls. And this is also very wild. Absolutely nuts. Some of them, obviously, like Suns, have gone up, and Flesh Eater Courts have come down because of that big. They were at 64% before. Okay, so whatever nerf Flesh Eater Courts needed previously is about what Sons of Behemoth need now. Some of them have gone up massively, like Deepkin, as an example. Also, we've seen Lumineth and we've seen Sylvaneth go up, whereas Fire Slayers and Cities of Sigmar Slaves to Darkness. Slaves to Darkness have taken a huge nosedive, actually. Previously, their positive win rate potential was 53%. It's down to 44%, which is pretty tragic. Our next graph goes in to show you how different the armies are between the two battle scrolls in their meta representation. So how many were played before? For example, 77% more games are being played with Cruel Boys than in the last battle scroll, as an example. In other cases, you can see that Soulblight Gravelords, obviously because, as I talked about, their battle tome kind of coming out, not quite out yet, being in a bit of an awkward place. You can see they've had the biggest drop-off between the two battle scrolls and people not playing them. We've also seen Ogres not played as much, Cities not played as much, Sinesh not played as much, Magic and Nurgle not played as much. Then Cruel Boys have been played much more. Idoneth Deepkin have been played much more. Fire Slayers have been played much more. Sons of Behemoth have been played much more. And then Gloomspite Gitz have been played much more as well. But Gloomspite Gitz being played much more has actually not led to a more successful win rate. And that's just because Gloomspite Gitz have more normally played by people who are just having a good time. New battle scroll out, people trying it out for the first time, putting a bunch of Sunstealer Wheelers on the board, realizing they do suck. And I think that's why we're seeing that result. This is actually a new data set as well that we've added in that Rob got asked for specifically, which I think is very fun. And this is the number of unique players per faction. So this is gonna show you how many people uniquely played one of a faction. So like Stormcast Eternals, there were 728 people over the course of this GHB, so since the launch of this season, who played Stormcast Eternals at 2-day events. Now, they may also have played other factions as well, but that's the most unique players to that faction. Slaves to Darkness, 699 as an example. So quite a large pool. Where it gets really interesting is when you get towards the bottom of the pack. Kharadron Overlords, over the course of the past year almost now, have only had 154 competitive players playing them. Fire Slayers, 165. Sinesh, 169. Incredibly thematic. Cities of Sigmar, only 189. So as an example, Cities of Sigmar have got, there's almost 4 times as many people playing Stormcast Eternals or have played Stormcast Eternals versus playing Cities of Sigmar. And obviously the numbers then move up, but they move up pretty aggressively. Like Nighthaunt 362, then Seraphon and Skaven is at 400, and then you go straight up to 700 from Gitz to Slaves to Darkness, with going up to Stormcast Eternals. So there's nearly a 300-person jump up to Stormcast Eternals and Slaves to Darkness. There's a bunch of reasons I'm going to guess for that. I think, number one, they're much easier to hobby. It's much easier to hobby a Stormcast Eternals and Slaves to Darkness army than it is to do a KO, Fire Slayers, or Sinesh army, as an example. Also, they're much easier to put on the board. There's a lot less brain power in some of those armies as well. There's a lot of just moving stuff around, real big elite units. A lot less of like holy withins and just go punch stuff, which I think is a very popular playstyle as well that people enjoy. This is a great data set. I've loved this. There's lots of information to break down here and look through. And I think there's some really interesting information as well. I like this a lot. One of the interesting factors is that Nighthaunt had such a huge win rate and meta rep at the start of AOS 4 and now it's rubbish. Like meta rep and also win rate is not that great. So they're never going to play enough games now to pull their win rate down from before Christmas. Now, that's if you were to take every piece of data over the whole of the GHB. So if you notice, these win rates and meta reps are just from since this battle scroll has launched, not taking any data from anything previous, because actually that really colors the numbers. Because if we were to still use that data as an example, Nighthaunt would still be too strong, but that wouldn't make any sense because actually we can see currently in the current universe they're not doing that great. Anyway, that's been really interesting. Let me know what you think of all of the data so far. I'm a little disappointed because we're back to Suns. I wear my heart on my chest about this, and I've been very clear in this video, and I've been very clear in my other videos as well. I really don't consider them to be like a tactical good game. I think Suns should be kind of in a Blood Bowl situation. They should be the fun, silly, goofy army that you play and put on the board. And they roll around, and if you roll enough 4-ups, then you're smashing pieces off the board, and it's really, really fun. I think, but we do also have a brand new way of playing in the new GHB. You've got these progressive missions, which are very interesting, which is going to be much harder to do when I know what your progressive missions are, and you've only got a few models to do it with. So I might be able to do a little bit more defensive stuff on that in that regard. Maybe also how we're going to score primary is going to change as well. So there's a lot of stuff that maybe is going to mix that up, but ultimately also changing what missions we're playing is also going to make some stuff different as well. So that will be fun to look at. So I'm very hopeful for the new version of the game, the new season soon. So I hope you are too. Thanks for watching my video. And thank you as always to Warhammer Rob. Let me know if you liked it. Thanks very much. Bye.